She was running barefoot from her ex at a gas station when she saw the bikers. Desperate, she begged the silent one for help. He pulled her onto his motorcycle and whispered 6 words that changed everything: "Stay still. You're safe now." The fluorescent lights of the highway gas station buzzed like angry wasps above Rose's head. Her bare feet burned against the cold concrete as she stumbled backward, away from the silver sedan that had been her prison for the last 3 hours. "Get back in the car, Rose." Darren's voice was ice-cold, the kind of calm that preceded storms. "We're not done talking." They were never done talking. Talking meant his voice rising while hers disappeared. Talking meant his hands gripping her wrists until they bruised purple and yellow like rotting fruit. Talking meant apologizing for things she didn't do while he rewrote reality with every breath. "I need to use the bathroom," she whispered, hating how small her voice sounded. "You should have thought about that before you embarrassed me in front of my mother." His fingers wrapped around her upper arm, nails digging crescents into her skin. "Get in the car." Something inside Rose's chest cracked open. Not courage exactly, more like the final wire snapping in a bridge that had been fraying for years. "No." The word hung in the air between them, foreign and dangerous. Darren's face transformed. The mask he wore for the world, charming, successful, concerned boyfriend, melted away like wax near flame. What remained underneath made her stomach turn to water. "What did you just say to me?" Rose yanked her arm free and ran. Her bare feet slapped against the pavement as she bolted toward the only sign of life in the desolate rest stop, a cluster of motorcycles parked near the air pump, their chrome catching the sickly yellow light. 5 or 6 of them, all black leather and danger, the kind of men her mother warned her about. Right now, they looked like salvation. "Help." Her voice cracked as she crashed into their circle. "Please, I need." Darren's hand caught her hair, jerking her backward so hard her neck popped. She cried out, and suddenly the world erupted into motion. The bikers turned as one, a wall of leather and ink and barely contained violence. But it was the man directly in front of her who made Darren's grip loosen, just a fraction, just enough. He was tall, silent, with dark eyes that reflected nothing and everything at once. A cracked helmet dangled from his handlebars like a broken halo. He didn't speak. Didn't need to. His presence alone shifted the atmosphere, made the air feel thinner, sharper. "This is none of your business," Darren said, recovering his smooth voice, the one he used with police officers and judges. "This is my girlfriend. She's having an episode. Bipolar, you know. I'm just trying to get her home safely." "Liar." Rose's scream tore from somewhere deep, primal. "He's lying. Please don't let him take me." The silent biker's eyes flicked from Darren to Rose, taking in her bare feet, her bruised arm, the terror that made her whole body shake. He made a decision without speaking, pulling Rose forward with one hand while using his body to block Darren's advance. "You're making a huge mistake," Darren said, his lawyer voice activating. "I'll have every cop in the state looking for you. That's kidnapping. You're going to prison for touching her." The biker lifted Rose onto his motorcycle seat like she weighed nothing. She gasped at the sudden movement, at the solid warmth of the leather beneath her, at the shocking gentleness of his hands. Then he leaned close, his breath warm against her ear, and whispered 6 words that rewrote her entire world. "Stay still. You're safe now." His voice was gravel and smoke, quiet enough that only she could hear. He swung onto the bike in front of her, the engine roaring to life between her legs, vibrating through her bones. "Hold on," he said, louder this time. Rose's arms wrapped around his waist instinctively as the motorcycle lurched forward. Behind them, Darren's scream of rage cut through the night, then disappeared beneath the thunder of the engine. They shot out of the gas station like a bullet from a gun, the wind tearing Rose's hair back, stealing her breath, burning her eyes. She buried her face against the stranger's leather jacket and held on with everything she had. The highway stretched before them, endless and dark, illuminated only by the single headlight cutting through the blackness. Rose's heart hammered against her ribs, adrenaline and terror and something else, something that felt dangerously close to hope, flooding her system. She didn't know where they were going. Didn't know this man's name. Didn't know if she'd just traded one nightmare for another. But for the first time in 3 years, she could breathe without asking permission. The motorcycle ate up the miles, leaving the gas station, and Darren, far behind. Rose's bare feet dangled in the rushing air, and she realized with a shock that she was crying. Not the silent, careful tears she'd learned to produce without making noise, but huge, body-shaking sobs that the wind carried away before they could fully form. The biker's hand left the handlebar for just a moment, patting her clenched fingers where they gripped his jacket. A silent acknowledgement. A promise that his whispered words were real. She was safe. At least for now. The motorcycle's engine cut to silence in front of a massive warehouse that looked like it had survived a war. Graffiti scarred the brick walls, and a single flickering light illuminated a dented metal door marked only with a crude painting of a raven's skull. Rose's legs trembled as the biker helped her off the seat. Her feet touched gravel, and she winced. Now that the adrenaline was fading, every cut and scrape on her soles screamed for attention. The biker noticed. Without a word, he lifted her again, this time cradling her like a child, and carried her toward the door. Rose's cheeks burned with humiliation and something else she couldn't name. "I can walk," she mumbled against his chest. "Your feet are bleeding." 3 words. That was all he'd given her since the gas station, but they landed with the weight of a full conversation. He kicked the door twice with his boot. It swung open to reveal a cavernous space that smelled of motor oil, cigarette smoke, and coffee. Motorcycles in various states of disassembly lined the walls. In the center, 4 men sat around a table playing cards, beer bottles sweating in the humid air. They looked up as one, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Jax, a man with a gray beard and arms like tree trunks, stood slowly. What the hell is this? So his name was Jax. Rose filed that information away as he set her down on a worn couch that had seen better decades. She immediately pulled her knees to her chest, making herself as small as possible. She needed help, Jax said simply. Help? A younger man with a snake tattoo winding up his neck laughed without humor. Brother, we're not a charity. We're not the police. We're barely legal on good days. Snake's right, another man, thin with nervous energy, paced near the table. You can't just bring random women here. You know the rules. No civilians in the clubhouse unless she stays. Jax's voice didn't rise, but it cut through the argument like a blade through silk. Until morning. Then we figure it out. The bearded man, clearly the leader, studied Rose with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She felt naked under his gaze, every bruise and cut catalogued, every ounce of her fear measured and weighed. What's your name, girl? Rose, her voice came out like broken glass. Who's looking for you, Rose? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. How could she explain Darren? How he'd isolated her from friends, convinced her family she was unstable, controlled every dollar, every phone call, every breath. How could she make these dangerous strangers understand that going to the police meant Darren's lawyer father making her look crazy, meant losing the custody battle for a child that didn't even exist yet, one he kept threatening to give her, to keep her home where she belonged? Her ex, Jax, answered for her. Violent. She ran. I got her out. Christ, Jax. Snake ran a hand through his hair. You know what happens when we get involved in domestic shit. Remember Phoenix? Remember how that ended? Something flickered across Jax's face, too fast for Rose to catch, but the other men saw it. They exchanged looks heavy with shared history. This is different, Jack said quietly. It's never different, the leader sighed, pulling out a cigarette. But you don't bring strays here unless you're serious. So she can stay tonight. Tomorrow, she goes to a women's shelter or the cops. We clear? Jax nodded once. The tension eased slightly. Snake returned to the card table, muttering under his breath. The nervous pacer grabbed a first aid kit from a cabinet. The leader lit his cigarette and studied Rose like she was a complicated engine he couldn't quite figure out. I'm Reaper, he said finally. I run this place. You hurt any of my boys, we hurt you back. You bring cops here, we disappear and you're on your own. You steal from us, pray we don't find you. Understand? Rose nodded, throat too tight for words. Good. There's a cot in the back room. Bathroom's through there, lock's broken but nobody here's gonna bother you. Jax vouched for you, which means something, he pointed his cigarette at her. Don't make him regret it. Jax appeared beside the couch with the first aid kit, kneeling down to examine her feet without asking permission. His hands were surprisingly gentle as he cleaned the cuts, applied antiseptic that made her hiss, and wrapped them in clean gauze. Thank you, Rose whispered. He looked up at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something in his dark eyes that terrified her more than Darren's rage ever had. Recognition. Like he'd seen her before, in someone else's face. Like her pain was an old familiar song he'd been trying to forget. Get some sleep, he said, standing. You're safe here. But as he walked away, Rose wondered if anyone was ever truly safe anywhere. Or if safety was just another beautiful lie people told themselves in the dark. Rose couldn't sleep. The cot in the back room was more comfortable than it had any right to be, buried under a surprisingly clean blanket that smelled like laundry detergent and motorcycle exhaust. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Darren's face, the way it had transformed at the gas station, all pretense stripped away to reveal the monster underneath. He would be looking for her. Right now. Calling her phone, which she'd left in his car along with her purse, her shoes, her entire life. He'd be spinning a story for the police. His mentally unstable girlfriend had another episode, ran off with dangerous men, needed to be rescued from herself. The police would believe him. They always believed him. Rose pulled the blanket tighter and stared at the water-stained ceiling. Through the thin walls, she could hear the low rumble of male voices, the clink of beer bottles, occasional laughter that made her flinch. These men were strangers. Criminals, maybe. She'd traded Darren's familiar evil for an unknown one. Stay still. You're safe now. Jax's whispered words echoed in her mind. She wanted desperately to believe them. The voices in the main room faded. Footsteps retreated. An engine roared to life outside, then another, until silence settled over the warehouse like dust. Rose's breathing steadied. Maybe she could sleep after all. Maybe. Bang bang bang. The sound of fists hammering on metal exploded through the warehouse. Rose shot upright, heart detonating in her chest. Police. Open up. No. No no no. Darren had found her. He'd called the cops, fed them his lies, and now they were here to drag her back to him. Rose scrambled off the cot, eyes wild, looking for an escape that didn't exist. The back room had no windows, only one door leading to the main garage. She was trapped. The door to her room opened. Rose screamed, a short, sharp sound she immediately tried to swallow. Jack stood in the doorway, still fully dressed despite the late hour. His expression was calm, almost peaceful, like men pounding on his door at midnight was a regular occurrence. It's not the police, he said quietly. But they said. Snake. Checking if you're a flight risk, his eyes found hers in the darkness. Are you? Rose's breath came in short gasps. Her hands shook so badly she had to clasp them together. I thought. I thought Darren. Jack stepped into the room, and she instinctively pressed herself against the wall. He noticed, stopped moving, gave her space. Darren's not here. You're safe. You keep saying that, Rose's voice broke. But I'm not safe. I'll never be safe. He'll find me. He always finds me. I tried to leave before, twice, and both times she couldn't finish. The memories were teeth, tearing at her from the inside. Jax was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked her. He sat down on the floor, cross-legged, making himself smaller, less threatening. From this angle, she could see the scars on his knuckles, the exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. 5 years ago, he said, voice low, I lost someone. Someone I should have protected. I didn't get there in time. He paused, jaw working. I won't let that happen again. Rose slid down the wall until she was sitting too, knees pulled to her chest. You don't know me. Why do you care? Don't have to know someone to know they need help. Help, she laughed, bitter and broken. Everyone wants to help until it gets complicated. Until he shows up with his lawyer and his perfect story and suddenly I'm the problem. I'm the crazy one. I'm the liar. Jax reached behind him and pulled something from his jacket, the cracked helmet she'd seen hanging from his handlebars. He set it on the floor between them, a strange offering. My sister's, he said. Lily. She died wearing it. Boyfriend ran her off the road when she tried to leave him. His fingers traced the largest crack. I keep it to remember what happens when you wait too long to act. Rose stared at the broken helmet, understanding flooding through her. This wasn't pity. This was penance. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be sorry. Be smart. He pushed the helmet closer to her. Keep this tonight. Reminder that you're not alone. Rose's fingers brushed the cracked surface. It was cool, solid, real. What if he finds me anyway? She asked. Jack stood, moving to the door. He paused in the threshold, backlit by the dim garage lights. Then he goes through me first. The door closed with a soft click, leaving Rose alone with a dead girl's helmet and the first fragile seed of hope she'd felt in years. She pulled the helmet into her lap and finally, let herself cry. Rose woke to the sound of sirens. For a disoriented moment, she thought she was back in Darren's apartment, that the last 12 hours had been a fever dream, that she'd wake to find his hand wrapped around her throat for embarrassing him again. Then she felt the cracked helmet still clutched against her chest and remembered, the gas station, the motorcycle, the whispered promise of safety. The sirens grew louder, then stopped abruptly outside the warehouse. Rose's blood turned to ice. She scrambled off the cot just as voices erupted in the main garage, official, authoritative voices that made her stomach drop through the floor. We're looking for a Rose Miranda Chen. We have reason to believe she's on the premises. Rose's hand flew to her mouth. He'd done it. Darren had actually called the police. The door to her room burst open. Reaper stood there, face thunderous. You got a warrant for being here, or is there something you forgot to mention last night? I didn't, I swear I didn't know. Save it. Get out here. Now. Rose followed him into the main garage on shaking legs, still wearing yesterday's torn dress, her bandaged feet barely supporting her weight. 2 police officers stood near the entrance, hands resting on their belts. Behind them, morning sunlight streamed through the open door like an accusation. The female officer stepped forward, her expression professionally neutral. Rose Chen? Rose nodded, unable to speak. Ma'am, we received a missing person report filed at 6 a.m. this morning by a Darren Mitchell. He claims you disappeared from a gas station last night and may have been taken against your will. He's very concerned about your well-being. Of course he was. Darren was always concerned in front of witnesses. I wasn't taken, Rose managed. I left. So you know Mr. Mitchell? He's my— Rose's throat closed around the word. My ex-boyfriend. The male officer pulled out a notepad. Mr. Mitchell also filed a harassment claim. Says you've been stalking him, making threats, damaging his property. He provided text messages, voicemails, emails. That's not true. Rose's voice cracked. He's lying. I never. But even as she spoke, doubt crept in. How many times had Darren grabbed her phone, sent messages to himself from her number? How many voicemails had he recorded using her voice from old videos, edited and manipulated? He'd been building his case for months, creating evidence of her instability for exactly this moment. The female officer's expression softened slightly. Ma'am, are you injured? Those bruises on your arm. She fell, Rose heard herself say, the old script activating automatically. I'm clumsy. I fell. The lie tasted like ashes. Jax moved then, stepping between Rose and the officers with the same quiet authority he'd shown at the gas station. He hadn't said a word until now, just watched from beside his motorcycle, but his presence shifted everything. She left willingly, Jax said. I witnessed an altercation. She asked for help. I provided it. No kidnapping. No crime. The male officer sized him up. And you are? Jackson Rivers. I own this property, he gestured to the warehouse. Security cameras cover the parking area. You want proof she came here on her own, I'll provide it. Rose's head snapped toward him. Security cameras? If those existed, they would show her running, show Darren grabbing her. We'd like to see that footage, the female officer said. Sure. Soon as you bring a warrant, Jax's voice was calm, almost bored. Otherwise, Ms. Chen is free to leave whenever she wants. She's not being held. Never was. The officers exchanged glances. The male one turned back to Rose. Ma'am, do you want to file a report? About the altercation last night? This was it. The moment she'd fantasized about during 3 years of hell. The chance to make it official, to put Darren's crimes on record, to finally speak the truth out loud to people who could do something about it. Rose opened her mouth. Darren's lawyer father. The judge who owed him favors. The carefully constructed evidence of her instability, the inevitable counter-lawsuit. The restraining order he'd file against her. The way he'd destroy what little remained of her life. No, she whispered. No report. The disappointment in Jax's eyes was somehow worse than Darren's rage had ever been. The female officer handed Rose a card. If you change your mind, call this number. We have resources for. She's fine, the male officer interrupted, already turning away. Just another domestic drama. Let's go. They left, taking their sirens and their hollow offers of help with them. The silence they left behind was deafening. Rose stood in the middle of the garage, still clutching the officer's card, feeling like she'd just failed a test she hadn't known she was taking. Jax walked past her without a word, disappearing into the back room. And Rose realized that safety, real safety, required something she didn't know if she had any more. The courage to fight back. Rose sat on the curb outside the warehouse, staring at the business card the officer had given her. The sun climbed higher, baking the asphalt and her shame in equal measure. Inside, she could hear the low rumble of voices, Jax's crew arguing about what to do with her. She didn't blame them. She'd had her chance and choked. The metal door screeched open. Footsteps approached, but Rose didn't look up. You hungry? Jax's voice. Not really. He sat beside her, close enough that she could smell motor oil and leather. He didn't push, didn't lecture. Just sat there like he had all the time in the world. I'm a coward, Rose finally said. No. You're scared. Different thing. Is it? She laughed bitterly. I had the police right there. I could have told them everything. Instead, I protected him. Again. Jax was quiet for a moment. My sister did the same thing. For times the cops showed up. For times she said she was fine, it was a misunderstanding, she'd fallen, walked into a door, he picked up a piece of gravel, rolled it between his fingers. Fifth time, she couldn't tell them anything. Because she was dead. Rose's breath caught. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm not telling you this to make you feel worse, he tossed the gravel away. I'm telling you because fear doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But staying scared forever? That's how he wins. He's already won. You saw what he did, filed a missing person report, made me look like the stalker. He's been planning this for months. Building evidence, documenting my episodes, creating a paper trail that makes me look insane. Rose's voice dropped to a whisper. His father is Judge Christopher Mitchell. Do you understand? Even if I fight, I lose. Jax turned to look at her properly. So what's your plan? Hide here forever? Wait for him to find you? I don't know, the admission hurt. I don't have money. No phone. No ID. Everything was in my purse in his car. I don't even have shoes, she gestured at her bandaged feet. Reaper wants you gone by tonight, Jax said bluntly. Can't have civilian problems hanging around. It's not personal, it's survival. This crew's got enough heat from the cops without adding domestic situations to the mix. Rose nodded, throat tight. I understand. I'll leave. I don't know where to go. Jax stood, brushing off his jeans. There's a women's shelter in Riverside. 3 hours north. They don't ask questions, don't require ID. My sister stayed there once before, he didn't finish. I can get you there. On your motorcycle? Unless you'd rather walk. Rose looked up at him, shielding her eyes from the sun. Why are you helping me? Really? His jaw tightened. Because nobody helped Lily when it mattered. Because I was deployed overseas doing my duty while she was dying in a ditch 20 miles from here. Because every time I close my eyes, I see her face and wonder what would have happened if someone, anyone, had just given her a way out. He met her gaze. I can't save my sister. But maybe I can save you. The raw honesty in his voice cracked something open in Rose's chest. Okay, she whispered. Riverside. I'll go. An hour later, Rose stood beside Jax's motorcycle wearing borrowed clothes, oversized jeans rolled at the ankles, a faded band t-shirt, and a leather jacket that smelled like someone else's life. Snake had donated steel-toed boots that were 2 sizes too big but better than nothing. Reaper emerged from the warehouse, carrying a helmet, not the cracked one from last night, but a glossy black one with a silver raven painted on the side. Take this, he said gruffly, shoving it at Rose. Can't have you dying on the highway. Bad for business. Rose took it, surprised by the unexpected kindness. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't come back, but there was no real malice in his voice. Jax, you got your phone? Jax patted his jacket pocket. Always. Call when you drop her off. And Rivers? Reaper's expression grew serious. Don't do anything stupid. No heroics. Drop her at the shelter and come home. Clear. Crystal. Reaper didn't look convinced, but he stepped back. Jax swung onto the motorcycle, and Rose climbed on behind him, this time without panic, without Darren's hands chasing her, without sirens screaming in her ears. This time, it was a choice. She wrapped her arms around Jax's waist, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady rhythm of his breathing. Ready? He asked. Rose thought about Darren, about the police, about 3 years of systematic destruction disguised as love. She thought about Lily, who'd never gotten her chance to escape. "Ready," she said. The engine roared to life, and they rode north toward something that might have been freedom. Or might have been another beautiful lie. Only time would tell. The highway stretched endlessly before them, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through golden hills that rolled toward the horizon like frozen waves. Rose had stopped counting the miles after the first hour, stopped thinking about Darren after the second. There was something hypnotic about the motorcycle's rhythm, the way the world blurred at the edges, the way holding on to Jax felt less like clinging to a stranger and more like anchoring herself to something solid for the first time in years. When Jax finally pulled off the highway onto a narrow dirt road, Rose's legs were numb and her arms ached from holding on. The road climbed steadily upward, winding through scrub brush and twisted trees until it ended abruptly at a cliff's edge. The view stole her breath. The ocean spread before them like hammered metal, the setting sun painting it copper and gold. Cliffs dropped away sharply, waves crashing against rocks far below, sending up plumes of white spray that caught the dying light. "We're stopping?" Rose asked as Jax killed the engine. "You need to stretch." "So do I," he dismounted, rolling his shoulders. "Plus, there's something you should know before we get to Riverside." Rose's stomach tightened. "What?" "The shelter has a 3-day intake process. Background checks, interviews, paperwork. They're thorough, it's what makes them safe. But it also means Darren could track you there if he's looking." "So what do I do?" Jax pulled 2 water bottles from his saddlebag, tossed her one. "You tell them everything. The truth, all of it. They've seen it before, the manipulation, the false reports, the powerful family connections. They know how to protect women from men like him." He paused. "But you have to actually tell them. No more stories." Rose opened the water bottle, took a long drink to avoid responding. The truth. She'd been running from it so long she wasn't sure she remembered what it looked like anymore. They walked to the edge of the cliff, not too close, but close enough to feel the wind whipping up from below. Rose sat on a flat rock, and Jax leaned against a twisted tree a few feet away, giving her space. "How long were you with him?" Jax asked after a while. 3 years. 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days, Rose's laugh was hollow. "I counted every single one toward the end." "How'd it start?" And somehow, with the ocean roaring below and the sun bleeding into the horizon, Rose found herself talking. Really talking. Not the sanitized version she'd given her mother or the lies she'd told co-workers, but the truth. She told him about meeting Darren at a coffee shop, how charming he'd been, how attentive. How he'd love-bombed her with gifts and poetry and promises of forever. How slowly, so slowly she didn't notice until it was too late, the gifts became controls. The attention became surveillance. The promises became threats. "He never hit me," Rose said quietly. "Not really. A few shoves, some grabbed wrists, once he threw a glass that cut my shoulder. But mostly it was," she struggled for words. "Psychological. He'd tell me I was worthless, then buy me flowers and say he was sorry, that I made him crazy with love. He'd accuse me of cheating, check my phone constantly, forbid me from seeing friends, for our relationship's health. He convinced my mom I was unstable, told my boss I had drug problems. I lost my job, my apartment, all my savings. By the end, I had nothing except him." "And you believed you deserved it," Jax said softly. Rose's eyes burned. "How did you know?" "Because Lily said the same thing. That she was too difficult, too emotional, too broken. That her boyfriend was just trying to help her be better." His voice went rough. "She died believing she was the problem." The sun touched the horizon, and the world caught fire. "I don't want to die believing that," Rose whispered. "Then don't." She turned to look at him. Jax's face was half in shadow, his expression unreadable, but something in his eyes made her chest tight. "Why do they call you Stoneheart?" she asked suddenly. His jaw worked. "After Lily died, I shut down. Didn't talk for 6 months. Didn't feel anything. The crew started calling me Stoneheart because nothing got through anymore. No pain, no joy, nothing. Just stone. And now?" He was quiet for so long Rose thought he wouldn't answer. "Then, now I'm trying to remember what it felt like to be human." The sun slipped below the horizon, leaving them in purple twilight. Rose stood, walked closer to Jax, close enough to see the scars on his knuckles, the exhaustion carved into his face, the carefully buried grief in his eyes. "Thank you," she said. "For everything. We're not there yet. I know. But thank you anyway." Something passed between them in that moment, not romance, nothing so simple. More like recognition. Two broken people standing on a cliff's edge, trying to figure out how to start healing. "We should go," Jax said finally. "Want to reach Riverside before full dark." Rose nodded, but as they walked back to the motorcycle, she realized something had shifted. The fear was still there, sharp and insistent, but it was no longer the only thing she felt. For the first time in 3 years, she felt something else too. Angry. The Sunset Motel was exactly the kind of place people went to disappear. Flickering neon sign. Cracked parking lot. A clerk who took cash without asking questions and handed over 2 keys to adjoining rooms without meeting their eyes. Rose stood in the doorway of room 12, staring at the faded floral bedspread and water-stained ceiling, feeling the weight of the day finally crushed down on her shoulders. "Lock your door," Jax said from room 11's doorway. "I'm right here if you need anything." Rose nodded, too exhausted for words. She closed the door, turned the lock, and collapsed onto the bed fully clothed. Sleep pulled her under like a riptide. She dreamed of Darren's hands around her throat. The sound woke her at 2 a.m. At first, Rose thought it was part of her nightmare, a low, anguished sound that could have been pain or rage or both. Then she heard it again, coming through the thin wall between their rooms. Jax. Rose sat up, heart pounding. Another sound, something breaking, a strangled gasp, then words she couldn't quite make out. She should stay in her room. Mind her own business. Let him have his privacy. But the sound was wrong. Desperate. The sound of someone drowning. Rose unlocked her door and stood in the cold night air for a moment before knocking softly on room 11's door. "Jax?" No answer. Another choked sound. She tried the handle. Unlocked. Rose pushed the door open slowly. Jax was on the bed, still fully dressed, tangled in sheets soaked with sweat. His face was twisted in anguish, head thrashing back and forth. Asleep, but not peacefully. Trapped in whatever hell his mind had conjured. "No," he gasped. "Lily, no. I'm coming. His voice cracked. "Please. Please don't." Rose's heart shattered. She approached the bed carefully, unsure what to do. Touch him? Call his name? She'd read somewhere that waking someone from a nightmare could be dangerous, that they might lash out confused and disoriented. But watching him suffer felt worse. "Jax," she said softly. "Jax, wake up. You're dreaming." He didn't hear her. His breathing came in ragged gasps, hands clenching into fists. Rose sat on the edge of the bed and placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "Jax. It's Rose. You're safe. Wake up." His eyes flew open. For a terrible moment, he didn't see her, saw something else entirely, something that made him recoil like she'd burned him. Then recognition flooded in, and he jerked upright, putting distance between them. "What are you?" He ran a hand through his sweat-drenched hair. You shouldn't be here. You were having a nightmare. I'm fine, but his hands shook as he reached for the water bottle on the nightstand, and his voice was rough as sandpaper. You're not fine. Rose stayed where she was, giving him space. You were calling for Lily. Jax's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he'd tell her to leave, to mind her own business, to stop pushing. Instead, something in him seemed to collapse. It's always the same dream, he said quietly. I'm riding toward her house. I know something's wrong, I can feel it. But no matter how fast I go, the road keeps stretching longer. And I can hear her screaming for me, but I can't reach her. I never reach her. But in reality, I was 3,000 miles away in Afghanistan when her boyfriend ran her off the road. My commander pulled me aside during a patrol briefing. Said there'd been an accident. That Lily was gone. His voice went flat, emotionless. I didn't even get to say goodbye. Didn't get to see her one last time. By the time I got stateside, she was already buried. Rose's throat ached. Jax, that wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? He looked at her then, and the raw pain in his eyes made her want to cry. She called me 2 weeks before she died. Left a voicemail saying she needed help, that Marcus was getting worse, that she was scared. I was on a mission. Couldn't call back for 3 days. When I finally did, she said everything was fine. She'd overreacted. Marcus had apologized, his hands clenched. I believed her. I let it go. And 2 weeks later, she was dead. She told you she was fine. You couldn't have known. I should have known. The words exploded out of him. I'm her big brother. I was supposed to protect her. Instead, I was playing soldier while she was dying alone on a highway, trapped in a car filling with smoke, probably calling my name while I was. His voice broke completely. Rose moved without thinking, closing the distance between them. She didn't hug him, that felt too intimate, too presumptuous. Instead, she just sat beside him, shoulder to shoulder, a silent presence in his storm. They sat like that for a long time. Jax's breathing gradually slowed. The tension in his shoulders eased slightly. After she died, I stopped feeling things, he said finally. Stopped letting anyone close. Figured if I didn't care, I couldn't fail anyone else. He glanced at her. Worked pretty well for 5 years. What changed? Gas station. Girl with bare feet and bruises running from someone who was supposed to love her. His voice was barely a whisper. Looked just like Lily that last time I saw her. Same fear. Same desperation. Rose's eyes burned. I'm not your sister, Jax. I know. He turned to face her fully. But maybe helping you is how I learned to forgive myself for not saving her. The truth of it hung between them, heavy, honest, and impossibly sad. We're both pretty broken, aren't we? Rose said. Yeah, a ghost of a smile touched his lips. But maybe broken people are better at helping each other. We know where the cracks are. Rose stood, knowing she should return to her room, let him rest. At the door, she paused. Jax? You're not made of stone. Not even close. She closed the door softly behind her, leaving him alone with his ghosts. But somehow, they both felt a little less haunted than before. Rose woke to sunlight streaming through the motel curtains and the smell of terrible coffee. For 3 precious seconds, she forgot where she was, why she was here, what she was running from. Then reality crashed back in, heavy as stones. She showered in the rust-stained tub, borrowed clothes feeling like someone else's skin, and emerged to find Jax already awake, standing by his motorcycle in the parking lot. He looked better than he had at 2 a.m., more rested, more present, but the shadows under his eyes told their own story. Morning, he said, handing her a styrofoam cup of the terrible coffee and a wrapped breakfast sandwich from the gas station next door. We'll reach Riverside in about 2 hours. I called ahead. They're expecting you. Rose took the coffee gratefully. Thank you. For everything. I know I keep saying that, but... Her phone rang. Except she didn't have a phone. She'd left it in Darren's car at the gas station, along with everything else. But the ringing was coming from the pocket of the borrowed jacket she wore. Rose's hands trembled as she pulled out a phone she'd never seen before, sleek, black, expensive. Not hers. The screen lit up with a blocked number. Don't answer it, Jack said sharply. But Rose's thumb was already moving, drawn by some terrible magnetic pull. She swiped to accept and raised it to her ear. Hello, Rose. Darren's voice slithered through the speaker, smooth and poisonous. Rose's coffee cup slipped from her fingers, splashing across the asphalt. Surprised? Darren continued. You shouldn't be. Did you really think you could just run away from me? From us? How? Rose's voice came out strangled. How did you? The jacket you're wearing? I put it in the lost and found at that charming little gas station yesterday afternoon. Had a feeling you're new. Friends. Might look there for spare clothes, he laughed, a sound like breaking glass. The phone was in the pocket. GPS enabled, of course. I've been watching your little road trip all night. Very romantic. Jax was beside her now, tension radiating from him like heat. He grabbed the phone from her shaking hand. Listen to me very carefully, he started. No, you listen, Darren's voice went cold. I don't know who you are, but you've made a serious mistake. That's my girlfriend you've kidnapped. My father is Judge Christopher Mitchell. My uncle is the district attorney. By this time tomorrow, you'll be in a cell wishing you'd never been born. She left voluntarily. Did she? Or did a violent biker with a criminal record prey on a mentally unstable woman during a medical episode? Darren's tone was almost conversational now. Because that's what the police report says. That's what the security footage from my dash cam shows, you threatening me, physically intimidating me, dragging Rose away while she was clearly disoriented and confused. Rose felt the world tilt sideways. Dash cam footage. He'd recorded the whole thing, probably edited it to show whatever narrative he wanted. You've been planning this, Jack said quietly. I've been planning for every contingency, because I know Rose. She's impulsive. Dramatic. Prone to episodes, the smile in Darren's voice was audible. But she always comes back to me. Because deep down, she knows the truth, no one else will ever love her like I do. No one else will ever put up with her issues. Jax's knuckles went white around the phone. Where are you? Closer than you think. But don't worry, I'm not going to stop you from delivering Rose to that shelter in Riverside. In fact, I'm counting on it, Darren's voice dropped, intimate and threatening. Because shelters have visitor logs. Sign-in sheets. Public records. And once she's documented there, once she's officially listed as residing at a facility for abused women, well. That's just more evidence of her deteriorating mental state, isn't it? More proof that she's unstable, making false accusations, desperately seeking attention. Rose grabbed the phone back, hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. You can't. I can, baby. I already have. The restraining order I filed yesterday? Granted this morning. You're legally prohibited from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of me, he paused for effect. Which means if I happen to show up at that shelter you're running to, you'll be the one arrested for violating the order. Not me. The phone went dead. Rose stared at it, her mind refusing to process what she'd just heard. He'd weaponized the legal system. Turned her escape into evidence against her. Made himself the victim and her the aggressor. Rose, Jax's voice seemed to come from very far away. Rose, look at me. She couldn't. The world was fragmenting, reality splitting into pieces she couldn't fit back together. Jax's hands were on her shoulders, steady and warm. Listen to me. He's playing mind games. Trying to scare you back into his control. We don't have to go to Riverside. We can. He's already won. Rose's voice was hollow. Don't you see? There's no shelter that can protect me from a judge's son. No police who'll believe me over him. No lawyer I can afford to fight his father. He's thought of everything. Jax grabbed the phone, examining it. Then, without warning, he threw it to the ground and smashed it under his boot, grinding it into plastic shards and silicon dust. Then we stop running, he said. What? You want to hide in shelters while he hunts you forever? Or do you want to actually fight back? His eyes blazed with something fierce and determined. He wants you scared and powerless. Wants you to believe you've already lost. So we do the one thing he's not expecting. What's that? Jax's smile was sharp as a knife. We take the fight to him. Rose stared at him, something awakening in her chest, something dangerous and long buried and burning bright. Maybe she was tired of running. Maybe it was time to stop being prey. How? She whispered. First, we go to the police. But not local cops who might be in his father's pocket. Federal. And we bring evidence he can't explain away. What evidence? Jax pulled out his own phone. The security cameras at my garage? They're real. And they caught everything from last night, including those cops who came looking for you, and you refusing to file charges out of fear. He started scrolling. Plus, I've got contacts. People who know how to dig up dirt on men like Darren. Men who hide behind lawyers and judges while destroying women piece by piece. Rose felt something crack open inside her, not breaking, but breaking free. He'll destroy you too, she warned. Let him try. The federal building was gray concrete and glass, imposing as a fortress. Rose stood on the sidewalk outside, staring up at it with her heart hammering against her ribs so hard she thought they might crack. We can still leave, Jax said beside her. This is your choice. Always your choice. But that was the thing, Rose hadn't had a choice in 3 years. Every decision had been filtered through Darren's control, his manipulation, his carefully constructed reality where she was always wrong and he was always the victim. Not anymore. Let's go, she said. The FBI agent assigned to domestic terrorism cases had been skeptical at first, until Jax showed him the security footage from the garage. Until he mentioned Judge Christopher Mitchell's name and the pattern of abuse cases that had mysteriously disappeared from his son's record. Until he pulled up files that showed Darren had 3 previous girlfriends who'd all filed police reports, all of which had been dropped or sealed. This is bigger than you know, Agent Torres had said, leaning back in his chair. We've been building a case against Judge Mitchell for corruption. Your boyfriend's pattern of abuse? It's part of how his father maintains control, by making evidence disappear. That had been yesterday. Now, Rose sat in a federal courtroom with emergency protective orders being filed not just against Darren, but documenting his father's interference with prior investigations. Darren sat across the aisle with his lawyer, looking every inch the successful young professional, tailored suit, perfect hair, concerned expression. When his eyes met Rose's, he smiled. A small, private smile that said, "You think this changes anything?" Rose's hands clenched in her lap. The judge, a federal judge, not one of Darren's father's friends, reviewed the documentation. The security footage showing Rose running, Darren grabbing her. The previous police reports from 3 other women. The evidence of Judge Mitchell personally intervening to seal records. Mr. Mitchell, the judge said, you understand these are serious allegations? Darren stood, his lawyer beside him. Your Honor, with all due respect, this is a vendetta. Ms. Chen and I had a difficult relationship, yes. But I've never been violent. These other women," he gestured dismissively, "they're liars seeking settlements. And this security footage has been edited to make me look." "The metadata shows no editing," Agent Torres interrupted. "FBI forensics confirmed it." Darren's mask slipped for just a second. Rose saw it, the flash of rage, quickly buried under concern. "Then it's been misinterpreted. Rose was having an episode. I was trying to help her. By grabbing her so hard you left bruises?" The judge's voice was sharp. "Mr. Mitchell, you filed a restraining order against Ms. Chen yesterday, claiming she was harassing you. Yet this footage shows you pursuing her aggressively while she fled. Would you like to explain that discrepancy?" Darren faltered. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. The judge turned to Rose. "Ms. Chen, would you like to make a statement?" Rose's throat closed. This was it. The moment she'd been too terrified to face. Every fiber of her being screamed to stay silent, to make herself small, to survive by submission. She felt Jax's presence behind her in the gallery, solid, steady, there. Rose stood on shaking legs. "For 3 years," she began, voice barely above a whisper, "Darren Mitchell made me believe I was worthless. That I was crazy. That no one would ever believe me over him." Her voice grew stronger. "He isolated me from my friends, got me fired from my job, controlled every dollar I spent and every person I talked to. He told me it was love." "Your Honor, this is clearly a coached," Darren's lawyer started. "I'm not finished." Rose's voice cut through the courtroom like a blade. She turned to face Darren directly. "You told me I was too broken for anyone else to love. That you were doing me a favor by staying with me despite my issues. You made me apologize for your violence. You convinced my own mother I was unstable. You destroyed every piece of evidence I tried to gather, every friendship I tried to maintain, every escape route I tried to build." Darren's face had gone hard, the mask completely gone now. "You're insane." "I'm not insane. I'm not broken. I'm not any of the things you spent 3 years convincing me I was." Rose's hands had stopped shaking. "I'm just done." The silence in the courtroom was absolute. The judge studied them both for a long moment. "Mr. Mitchell, the restraining order you filed is hereby dismissed. Ms. Chen, your petition for a protective order is granted. Mr. Mitchell is prohibited from contacting you by any means, from coming within 1,000 feet of you, and from accessing any shared accounts or property." The gavel came down. "Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges including stalking, harassment, and false reporting." Darren shot to his feet. "This is a joke. My father. Your father is currently under federal investigation and has no authority in this courtroom," the judge said coldly. "I suggest you sit down and be grateful you're not being taken into custody right now." But Darren wasn't listening. He was staring at Rose with such concentrated hatred that the bailiff moved closer, hand on his weapon. "You stupid bitch," Darren hissed. "You think this is over? You think a piece of paper protects you? I will destroy. Mr. Mitchell, you are in violation of the protective order that was just issued." The judge nodded to the bailiff. "Take him into custody for contempt." Everything happened fast after that. The bailiff grabbed Darren's arm. Darren jerked away, lunging toward Rose. Jax was already moving, stepping between them. Security swarmed in. Darren was forced to the ground, still screaming threats, his perfect facade completely shattered. And Rose stood there, watching the man who'd controlled her life for 3 years being dragged away in handcuffs, and felt nothing. No triumph. No relief. Just a vast, echoing emptiness where fear used to live. Outside the courthouse, Rose sat on the steps while Jax talked quietly with Agent Torres. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking, not from fear this time, but from shock. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving her hollow and exhausted. "You did good in there," Jack said, sitting beside her. "I don't feel good. I feel," Rose struggled for words. "Broken. Like even though he's gone, all the pieces of me he destroyed are still gone." "They're not gone. Just buried," Jax's voice was gentle. "Takes time to dig them back up." Rose looked at him, this stranger who'd become her unexpected anchor, this broken man trying to save her because he couldn't save his sister. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you heal. Really heal. Not just survive, actually live." It sounded impossible. But for the first time in 3 years, Rose thought maybe, just maybe, she could try. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning while Rose was sitting in a cramped apartment the Victims Advocacy Program had helped her secure. One room, kitchenette, bathroom with a door that actually locked. It was smaller than Darren's walk-in closet had been. It felt like a palace. "There's something I want to show you," Jack said when she answered. "If you're up for it." Rose had seen him only twice since the courthouse, once when he'd helped her move into the apartment, once when he'd brought her groceries because she was too afraid to go to the store alone. Each time, he'd stayed for exactly as long as she needed, then left without asking for anything in return. "What is it?" she asked. "Better if you see it yourself. I'll pick you up Saturday morning. 6 a.m. That's early. Trust me. It's worth it." Saturday morning arrived cold and clear. Rose dressed in the clothes she'd slowly been accumulating, jeans that actually fit, a warm jacket from the thrift store, boots that were her own. Small things. But after 3 years of wearing only what Darren approved, choosing her own clothes felt like a revolution. Jax pulled up on his motorcycle at exactly 6 a.m. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stretched a line of motorcycles that seemed to go on forever. Dozens of them. Maybe 100. All idling quietly in the dawn light, their riders waiting. Rose stepped outside, confused. "What is this?" "Annual charity ride," Jack said. "For survivors of domestic violence. We started it 5 years ago. After Lily." Reaper pulled up on his massive Harley, the silver-bearded leader looking almost gentle in the soft morning light. "Good to see you, girl. Ready to ride?" "I don't understand." "Every year, survivors ride with us," Jax explained. "We go from the city to the coast, about 80 miles. Raise money for shelters, legal aid funds, therapy programs. But mostly..." He met her eyes. "We show survivors they're not alone. That they're strong enough to take up space. To be loud. To exist without apologizing." Rose's throat tightened. "You want me to ride?" "Only if you want to." Snake appeared with a leather vest, the kind the club members wore, but different. Instead of the club patches, it had a single embroidered raven with spread wings. "For our guests of honor," he said gruffly. "You don't have to wear it if..." Rose took it, slipped it on. It fit perfectly. More motorcycles arrived. Rose saw other women among the riders now, some driving their own bikes, some riding behind club members. All wearing the same vest with the raven. All with stories written in their eyes that matched her own. An older woman with gray-streaked hair and a scar running down her cheek approached. "First ride?" she asked kindly. Rose nodded, not trusting her voice. "I was terrified my first time too. That was 3 years ago. Now I ride every year," she smiled. "It gets easier. Not the memories, those stick around. But carrying them? That gets lighter." The sun crested the horizon as the riders assembled. News crews appeared, filming the spectacle. A local reporter approached Rose, microphone extended. "Would you like to say anything about why you're riding today?" Rose's first instinct was to refuse, to hide, to make herself invisible. Then she thought about Darren watching this on the news from whatever cell he was occupying. She thought about his father, the corrupt judge. She thought about all the women still trapped in relationships like hers, believing they were alone. "I'm writing because I survived," Rose said clearly. "Because someone helped me when I needed it most. And because I want other women to know, it's not your fault. You're not crazy. You're not broken. And you deserve to be free." The reporter's eyes shone with unshed tears. "Thank you for your courage." Courage. Rose had never thought of herself as courageous. But as she climbed onto the motorcycle behind Jack's, as 100 engines roared to life around her, as they pulled out onto the highway in formation, chrome and leather and defiance, she felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest. Pride. The ride was magnificent. They thundered down the highway, an unstoppable force, drawing cheers from people on overpasses and in parking lots. They rode through small towns where survivors waited with signs, "You saved my life, 5 years free, thank you." At a rest stop halfway to the coast, Rose watched the women in raven vests sharing stories, laughing, crying, holding each other up. These weren't victims anymore. They were warriors who'd survived battles most people couldn't imagine. "How do you feel?" Jax asked, appearing beside her with water bottles. Rose thought about it. Really thought about it. For the first time in years, she checked in with herself without fear of punishment for having the wrong answer. "I feel," she started, then stopped. Tried again. "I feel like maybe I can actually survive this. Not just escape him, but actually heal. Actually become someone again." "You never stopped being someone, Rose. You just forgot for a while." They reached the coast as the sun hit its peak, the ocean spreading before them like liquid silver. The riders gathered on a bluff overlooking the water. Someone had set up a small memorial, photos of people who hadn't survived, names carved into driftwood, flowers left by those who remembered. Jax walked to the memorial and knelt before a photo of a young woman with his eyes and his smile. "Lily." He touched her picture gently, whispered something Rose couldn't hear. When he returned, his eyes were wet. "She would have liked you," he said quietly. "I wish I could have known her." "Me too," he paused. "She'd be glad I finally let someone in again. Even if it scares the hell out of me." Rose looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd saved her because he couldn't save his sister. This man who'd stood beside her in court, helped her find housing, asked nothing in return. This man who was just as broken as she was but still trying. "It scares me too," she admitted. "Everything scares me now. Going to the grocery store. Answering my phone. Being happy, because what if it gets taken away again?" "Then we're scared together," Jax said. "And maybe that's enough." As the sun set, the riders gathered driftwood for a bonfire on the beach below the bluff. Rose watched from a distance as flames climbed into the darkening sky, sending sparks dancing toward the first stars. The temperature dropped, the ocean wind cutting through her jacket, but she didn't want to leave. For the first time in years, she felt like she belonged somewhere. "You coming down?" Snake appeared beside her, less intimidating in the firelight. "We're about to start the ceremony." "Ceremony? You'll see. Come on." Rose followed him down the rocky path to the beach, where the club members and survivors had formed a loose circle around the fire. Someone was playing guitar softly. The older woman with the scar, her name was Patricia, Rose had learned, stood near the flames holding something small in her hands. Reaper's voice cut through the gathering darkness. "Every year, we come here to remember those we lost. And to celebrate those who survived." He looked around the circle. "Anyone who wants to share, the fire's yours." Patricia stepped forward first. "My name is Patricia. 3 years ago, I rode with you for the first time, barely able to speak about what happened to me. Tonight, I'm here to burn this. She held up a photograph, a man's face, handsome and cruel. My ex-husband. He told me I'd never escape him. That I'd die with his name on my lips. She tossed the photo into the fire. I'm still here. He's not. And I'm finally free. The circle erupted in quiet affirmations. We see you, you survived, welcome home. One by one, people approached the fire. Some burned photographs. Others burned restraining orders that were no longer needed because their abusers were in prison or dead or simply gone. One woman burned a wedding ring. Another burned a diary she'd kept of every injury, no longer needing evidence because she'd already won her case. Each burning was a release. A transformation. Turning pain into smoke and ash. Jack stood near the fire's edge, silhouetted against the flames. He pulled something from his pocket, the cracked helmet, or part of it. A piece of the shattered visor that he'd been carrying for 5 years. My sister Lily, he said, voice rough but steady. She died because I wasn't there. Because I was too far away to help. I've been carrying that guilt like armor, keeping everyone out so I'd never fail again. He looked at the helmet piece. But armor that keeps people out also keeps you locked in. Lily wouldn't want me living like this. She'd want, his voice cracked. She'd want me to forgive myself. To let people in again. To risk caring, even if it means risking loss. He tossed the visor piece into the fire. It melted slowly, plastic bubbling and blackening, releasing whatever ghost it had been holding. When Jack stepped back from the fire, his eyes found Rose's across the circle. Something passed between them, an acknowledgement, a question, a possibility. The circle eventually broke apart into smaller groups. Some people wandered down to the water's edge. Others stayed near the fire, sharing stories and silence in equal measure. Rose found herself walking along the shoreline, letting the cold water lap at her boots. Jax appeared beside her, as if summoned by thought alone. Thank you for today, Rose said. I didn't know I needed this. I didn't either. Not until I saw you standing up there, watching the fire like it held all the answers. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the bonfire growing distant behind them. The moon had risen, painting the waves silver. Can I tell you something? Rose stopped, turning to face him. I'm terrified of whatever this is between us. This? You. Me. The way you look at me sometimes, like I'm not broken. Like I'm just a person. A whole person who deserves. She struggled for words. I don't know how to do this. Darren was my only relationship. I don't know what healthy looks like. What if I'm so damaged that I can't? Stop. Jax's voice was gentle but firm. You're not damaged goods, Rose. You're healing. There's a difference. But what if I never fully heal? What if there are pieces of me that stay broken forever? Then they stay broken. So what? He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the firelight reflected in his eyes. I've got broken pieces too. Everyone does. The difference is whether you let those pieces define you or whether you build something new around them. Rose felt tears streaming down her face, not sad tears exactly, just the release of pressure she'd been holding for so long. I don't know how to build something new. Neither do I. But maybe we figure it out together. Jax raised his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he brushed tears from her cheek with his thumb. I'm not trying to fix you, Rose. I'm not trying to save you. I just want to stand beside you while you save yourself. It was the most honest thing anyone had ever said to her. Rose leaned forward until her forehead touched his, not a kiss, nothing rushed or demanding. Just contact. Connection. Two broken people acknowledging each other's humanity in the space between past trauma and possible future. They stood like that for a long moment, waves crashing around them, the bonfire a distant glow, the night vast and full of stars. "I'm not ready," Rose whispered. "For anything more than this. Not yet." "I know. I'm not either." Jax's breath was warm against her skin. "But maybe someday. Maybe someday." It was the most fragile promise Rose had ever made. But unlike the promises Darren had forced from her, promises of obedience, of silence, of shrinking herself to fit his needs, this promise was freely given. And that made all the difference. They walked back to the bonfire together, not holding hands but close enough that their shoulders brushed. The night stretched ahead, full of healing and hope and the slow, patient work of learning to be human again. For the first time in 3 years, Rose looked at the future and didn't feel afraid. She felt ready. The apartment key felt like freedom in Rose's hand. She stood in the doorway of her new place, still small, still modest, but hers in a way nothing had been in years. The walls were blank, waiting for her to fill them with whatever she chose. No more walking on eggshells. No more asking permission to exist. 2 months had passed since the courthouse. 2 months of therapy sessions where she slowly untangled Darren's voice from her own thoughts. 2 months of restraining order hearings, of depositions, of watching Darren's carefully constructed world collapse as more women came forward with their stories. Judge Mitchell had been suspended pending investigation. Darren faced multiple charges. Rose had stopped following the news about them. Their destruction was no longer her concern. Her concern now was rebuilding. She'd started a new job, administrative work at a non-profit that helped domestic violence survivors navigate legal systems. It was part-time, didn't pay much, but every dollar she earned was hers alone. She'd reconnected with her mother, slowly repairing the relationship Darren had poisoned. She'd even made a friend, Patricia from the charity ride, who texted her daily encouragement and terrible jokes in equal measure. And every weekend, Jax came to visit. Not to stay. Not to move in or take over or make decisions for her. Just to visit. To have coffee. To sit in comfortable silence or talk about everything and nothing. To remind her that healing didn't have to be solitary. On this particular Saturday, he'd texted, "Wear comfortable clothes. I have something to show you." Rose smiled at her phone. 3 months ago, a mysterious text would have sent her into panic. Now it just made her curious. Jax arrived on his motorcycle at noon, but something was different. Behind his bike sat another one, smaller, sleeker, with a deep blue paint job that caught the sunlight like water. "What's this?" Rose asked, stepping outside. "A friend's bike. He's letting me borrow it." Jax gestured to it. "Thought maybe you'd want to learn." Rose's heart stuttered. "Learn to drive? Only if you want to. No pressure. We can just go for a ride like always." "I want to." The words came out before Rose fully processed them. But as soon as she said it, she knew it was true. She wanted to learn. Wanted to control something powerful and dangerous. Wanted to prove to herself that she could. They drove to an empty parking lot on the edge of town, the kind of abandoned space where nobody would care about a beginner making mistakes. Jax spent an hour teaching her the basics, how to balance, how to shift, how to feel the bike's power without letting it overwhelm her. Rose fell twice. Got frustrated. Nearly gave up. But she didn't. By the time the sun started its descent toward the horizon, Rose could manage slow loops around the parking lot without wobbling. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't impressive. But it was hers. "You ready to take it on the road?" Jax asked. "The actual road? With cars and everything?" "Just for a little while. There's somewhere I want to take you." Rose's hands trembled as she gripped the handlebars. Fear and excitement tangled together until she couldn't separate them. "Okay. Let's do it." They rode out of the city on a coastal highway Rose had never traveled before. Jax led on his bike, staying close enough that she felt protected but far enough that she had to navigate on her own. The ocean appeared on their right, endless and blue, and Rose felt something inside her chest expand. This was what freedom felt like. Not just escaping. Not just surviving. But actually living. They stopped at a cliff overlooking the water, the same spot where they'd talked weeks ago, where Rose had first told her story without shame. Jax killed his engine and Rose did the same, her hands still shaking from adrenaline. "I can't believe I just did that," she said, laughing breathlessly. "Believe it. You're a natural." Rose climbed off the bike, her legs unsteady. She walked to the cliff's edge and just breathed. The wind whipped her hair back. The sun painted everything gold. And for the first time in 3 years, Rose felt like herself. Not the person Darren had tried to make her. Not the broken victim struggling to survive. Just Rose. Messy and scared and hopeful and alive. Jax appeared beside her, holding the cracked helmet, the one from that first night at the gas station, now mostly destroyed except for a single piece he'd saved. "I want you to have this," he said quietly. "To remember where you started. And how far you've come." Rose took the helmet piece, running her fingers over the crack that had never healed. "What about you? Don't you need it?" "I've got something better now." His eyes met hers, warm and honest. "I've got a reason to stop living in the past." Rose felt tears prick her eyes, happy tears this time. She stepped closer to Jax, close enough to see every scar, every line of exhaustion, every hint of hope in his expression. "I'm still healing," she said. "I'm still figuring out who I am without him. It's going to take time. I've got time. And I can't promise I won't have bad days. Days when I'm scared for no reason, when I flinch at shadows, when I can't get out of bed. Then I'll sit with you through the bad days. Just like you sat with me through my nightmares." Rose reached up and touched his face, the first time she'd initiated contact, the first time she'd felt safe enough to want this. "Thank you for not rushing me. For just being here. Thank you for letting me in." Jax covered her hand with his. "For trusting me when you had every reason not to." They stood like that as the sun set, two broken people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to walk toward the light together. Rose thought about that night at the gas station, how she'd run barefoot across concrete, how she'd climbed onto a stranger's motorcycle, how 6 whispered words had changed everything. "Stay still. You're safe now." She'd been still long enough. Been safe long enough. Now it was time for something more. "Jax?" Rose stepped back, moving toward the blue motorcycle. "I want to keep riding. Just a little further." He smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. "Where to?" "Anywhere." Rose put on the helmet he offered, feeling its weight settle comfortably around her head. "Everywhere. I don't care. I just want to see how far I can go. Then let's find out." They mounted their bikes as the last light faded from the sky. Rose's hands found the handlebars, steady and sure. The engine rumbled to life beneath her, powerful and hers to command. And as they rode into the night, not as savior and victim, not as broken pieces trying to fit together, but as two whole people choosing to journey side by side, Rose realized something profound. She wasn't running anymore. She was riding toward something new. Toward healing. Toward hope. Toward a future she'd build with her own hands. The road stretched endlessly before her, and for the first time in years, that didn't frighten her. It thrilled her. Because now she knew the truth Jax had whispered that first night, the truth that had saved her life and given her back her soul. She was safe. Not because someone else protected her, but because she'd finally learned to protect herself. And that made all the difference.